Alright, my friends, let's react to something that is not controversial at all. The title of the video goes, The Truth About... oh boy. The Truth About NATO without the US. Without the US, there is no NATO. Well, I guess we shall see. So, before I go into that, let me ask you for one thing. If you can leave a like, thank you so much. If you subscribe, you make my day. By the way, nowadays you can also hype a video. Helps a lot, please do it. Let's take a look at this one.
Trump is calling NATO a paper tiger and saying a U.S. exit is beyond reconsideration. Europe refused to support the Iran war. Spain closed its airspace to U.S. planes. Italy blocked U.S. bombers from landing at Sigonella. France banned U.S. resupply flights to Israel. The alliance has never looked this fractured.
All right, my friends, today is a really bad day to be a NATO member. We have to go back again. So let's take a look at this one more time.
To support the Iran war, Spain closed its airspace to U.S. planes.
All right, random country here, Spain. I have, there is something that I would love to share with you. Give me a second. Bam! Portuguese leader in contrast with Spain defends decision to let the US base in Iran campaign. My friends, if you guys are not leaving a like right now for Portugal, what the hell are you guys doing? I'm sorry. I'm happy, you know. I know this is bad because if NATO goes away, big problem. But you know what? My friends, you guys have to agree. Portugal instead of Spain all day, every day.
Italy blocked U.S. bombers from landing at Sigonella. France banned U.S. resupply flights to Israel. The alliance has never looked this fractured. So if the U.S. walks, what's left? The money. Let's start with the genuinely encouraging part, because Europe...
You know what? This is not even that great, because the guy says the money and uses a dollar sign, not a euro sign.
Let's start with the genuinely encouraging part, because Europe has actually been spending seriously. And finally, at the 2025 NATO summit in The Hague, member states agreed to hit 5% of GDP on defense by 2035.
All right.
That's split into 3.5% for actual military hardware and troops and 1.5% for infrastructure, cyber, and industrial capacity. In 2025, European NATO members hit a record $600 billion in defense spending, up
$600 billion, my friends.
Nearly 13% in real terms from the year before. Germany alone jumped to $107 billion, a country that was
Isn't America 900 billion?
Constitutionally and culturally pacifist for 8 decades.
Yeah, we don't even know why they end up being so... Yeah, very random that they couldn't spend for so many years, right, my friend?
That was constitutionally and culturally pacifist for 8 decades after World War II.
Part of the culture.
That kind of increase in 1 year is genuinely historic. Poland is already spending close to 5% of GDP on defense, the highest of any NATO member, and is quite...
No, but Poland, being real, is actually quite strong in terms of their military.
Quietly built one of the largest armies in Europe in just a few years.
No, true.
Notably, Spain opted out of the 5% target entirely, which tells you the commitment isn't uniform. But if the 3.5% core target gets hit broadly across the alliance, European defense spending could reach $850 billion by 2030, roughly where the US baseline sits today. From Washington's perspective, this is actually part of the case for stepping back. Europeans are finally paying their share after decades of leaning on American security guarantees.
Okay, apart from Spain, but we don't expect good things coming from there, we are actually, you know, overall Europe is doing well here in terms of money, or it will become better.
Whether the timing is...
Let's go back, sorry. Very important video, actually.
This is actually part of the case for stepping back. Europeans are finally paying their share after decades of leaning on American security guarantees. Whether the timing is smart or reckless is a separate debate, but the financial shift is real.
Okay.
The manpower. European NATO members field about 2.1 million active troops without the US. The numbers on paper are substantial. France, Germany, the UK, Poland, and Italy each have well over 100,000 active personnel. Poland alone
Impressive.
has quietly become one of the most heavily armed countries on the continent. The problem is that headcount and actual combat effectiveness aren't the same thing. Europe runs a huge variety of non-interoperable weapon systems across its member states. Different.
You know what? Poland is actually impressive for real. Almost seems like they have a war next to their. Yeah. I mean, makes sense why Poland is going so crazy. Russia is not that far away.
Huge variety of non-interoperable weapon systems across its member states. Different tanks, different artillery, different infantry vehicles. None sharing parts or maintenance protocols across borders. The European Defense Agency's own data shows EU states operate far more incompatible systems than the US military does. That makes joint operations expensive and logistically messy in ways that raw troop numbers don't capture. Europe is also genuinely short on things that make modern warfare actually work.
Okay, actually, I'm going to share my opinion here. Not about NATO, but about Europe. Europe was created to actually, put some pressure on the United States. Not put some pressure, but the United States end up growing so much, so fast that the European Union end up appearing because of that. But I think that there is a big difference here. And now being real, I know I was joking a bit with Spain, even though I don't agree with a lot of things in Spain, I have to admit. But Spain is an amazing country. I was joking. The thing about Spain, for example, and Portuguese and French, at the end of the day, I'm not anything similar to. I don't relate with a French guy, kind of. You know what I mean? And I think in America, even though Texas culture, Montana culture, New York culture, no matter the state you live, at the end of the day, all of you guys are American. You know what I mean? You can say, oh, all of you are European, but we don't even speak the same language. I don't think the connection is there. That's why I don't think the European Union works as well as the United States of America.
And logistically
Did that make sense, my friends? But is what I always felt that.
messy in ways that raw troop numbers don't capture. Europe is also genuinely short on things that make modern warfare actually work. Strategic airlift, the heavy transport planes needed to move large forces quickly over long distances, air-to-air refueling tankers, which determine how far your jets can actually reach, and deep strike capability, the ability to hit targets far behind enemy lines, which the US Air Force has provided to every major NATO operation for 30 years. Analysts at Bruegel and the Kiel Institute calculated that plugging those gaps to credibly deter Russia by 2027 would need an immediate $270 billion annually and 300,000 additional combat-ready troops. Not by
Not
2035, right now. That's the honest
Right now.
short-term picture, even if the long-term trend is heading the right way. Command and control. Probably the least talked about gap and the most dangerous one. NATO's entire command structure runs on American systems. Intelligence networks, satellite communication, surveillance, targeting data. Almost all of it US owned. Without that
Wait, what are we doing?
backbone, European multinational forces simply can't fight as a unified army. Defense analysts describe the existing workarounds as kludged together solutions.
I don't even know that word "cludges," but it means really bad.
Polite way of saying nobody expects them to hold under real wartime pressure. The
you
US is already stepping back here. In early 2026, it handed two major NATO headquarters, Joint Force Command Naples and Joint Force Command Norfolk, to European officers. There are serious discussions about appointing Britain's Admiral Sir Tony Ratigan as Supreme Allied Commander Europe, replacing
Yeah, because American troops end up leaving, or they are going to leave soon, Germany, right?
U.S. Army General Christopher Cavoli. Supporters say it's healthy and long overdue. The counter-argument is straightforward. The command is only as good as the intelligence and systems feeding into it, and most of those are still American. Both points are fair. The nuclear question. For 77 years, Europe's security rested on one simple guarantee. Attack
What?
a NATO member and you're risking nuclear war with America. That kept the peace on the continent longer than any period in modern history. If the
True.
US leaves, that guarantee goes. But
No,
Europe
no. Wait. We have nuclear power. I mean, right?
isn't standing still. On March 2nd, 2026, Macron announced what he's calling dissuasion avancée, forward.
He's a French, the French expression cannot be good.
6, Macron announced what he's calling dissuasion avancée,
Ah,
forward
boy.
deterrence, standing in front of a nuclear submarine at France's Ile-Long naval base. The
Okay.
idea is that France extends its nuclear umbrella to cover Germany, Belgium, and Poland. Those countries contribute to conventional support roles like early warning and air defense, while Paris keeps sole control over the nuclear trigger and all escalation decisions. France and the UK have also formalized joint nuclear submarine patrols and shared research, a two-country European deterrent that didn't formally exist a year ago. Whether it actually works comes down to one thing. Does Russia believe France would use nuclear weapons to defend Warsaw or Tallinn? A French president deciding whether to risk Paris getting hit to protect Riga is a very different call than the one Washington has historically been willing to make. That's not
That's a great point. Are we going to trust the French? Or never thought about this actually.
a knock on France, it's just the cold logic of deterrence.
No, it's a knock on
European nuclear umbrella is better than nothing. Whether it's equivalent to the American one is a much harder question. What the US actually loses. Leaving NATO has a real upside on paper. Stationing over 100,000 troops in Europe is expensive. Redirecting those resources toward the Indo-Pacific, which the US's own 2026 National Defense Strategy names as the top strategic priority, is a coherent argument. And if Europe genuinely hits 5% of GDP on defense, the decades-long burden-sharing complaint largely goes away. The problem is what gets lost in practice. Europe
What?
isn't just a defensive obligation. It's the physical infrastructure that makes the US a global military power. Ramstein Air Base in Germany is currently being used to coordinate drone operations against Iran. Satellite relays and data connections run through it because direct control from the US would simply be too slow. Lose it, and those operations become significantly harder to run from anywhere else. Aviano Air Base in Italy is the only US fighter base south of the Alps, recently upgraded to project forces rapidly into the Mediterranean. Naval Station Rota in Spain handles ballistic missile defense and marine staging for the entire Atlantic. Retired US generals have said
By the way, sorry, but I cannot allow that. There is a lot of things. What the hell is this naval station in Spain and they put Portugal? We are not the same country.
defense and marine staging for the entire Atlantic. Retired US generals have said plainly that losing these bases drops America from a global superpower to a regional one. It's not.
I mean, I guess it's fair to say this. Not probably. For sure, Europe needs America more than America needs us, Europe, right? But it's not like that. At the end of the day, Europe is still a very, very important continent, and in this case, let's say the European Union. So I don't know, my friends. I think everyone kind of loses, but some will lose more. Is what I would say, and I'm talking about us Europeans.
Not a political argument, it's logistics. Intelligence is the other side of it. European SIGINT and human intelligence networks give the US its picture of Russian naval movements in the Atlantic, terrorism networks across Africa, and threats across Eurasia. US collection capabilities are impressive, but not complete. And losing European partners leaves real blind spots that are hard to fill. Ukraine, Russia, and what comes next. Russia has been fighting in Ukraine for 5 years. It holds about 20% of Ukrainian territory and gains somewhere between 50 and 230 feet per day, essentially frozen into drone-saturated trench warfare. It's taken between 1.1 and 1.4 million casualties to get there, technically winning, but slowly and at a cost that would have broken most countries. U.S. support.
Oh, but Russia is really good at that type of war. Something that, honestly, to me, it was a big moment in terms of realizing that trusting the news is a bit dangerous. Is when you look at the news, specific couple of months ago or even 1 year or two ago, they always make it like Ukraine is winning. But then when you actually look at information, and it's sad because I support Ukraine, you realize that no, Russia is really good at this type of war. You know, they go slow, they grind, but recently Ukraine had some success from what I understand, but overall Ukraine have been losing this war. You know, it is what it is. But if you look at news here in Europe, you would think that Ukraine is destroying them. But I guess at the end of the day, they prefer to pass that message.
Financial aid, intelligence, logistics is central to Ukraine's ability to keep fighting. Pull that out, and Europe would need to absorb the entire burden alone, while simultaneously trying to deter Russia on its own eastern flank, with all the gaps already described. Ukraine's spy chief and multiple Western intelligence assessments point to 2027 as the year Russia could be ready to test NATO's eastern flank directly. That's not a distant scenario. It's worth saying on the other side, this exact pressure is what finally pushed Europe to rearm. Countries that resisted defense spending for decades are now moving fast because the alternative is genuinely existential. The threat Washington spent years warning about has done more to change European defense budgets than decades of diplomatic pressure ever managed. The signal to everyone else. Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines are watching closely. If the US walks away from 31 treaty-bound democracies over a disagreement, every security commitment in the Pacific immediately means less. Japan is already reading the room, deploying long-range missiles to its southwestern islands to build independent strike capability against China. When allies start
Japan and China, they really don't like each other. I mean, there is a lot of tension between them.
quietly building the capacity to operate without you, that says something. The bottom line. A NATO without the US is weaker now and potentially viable later, but that gap is exactly when Europe is most exposed, and it lines up almost perfectly with when Russia might be most tempted to move. And for the US, walking away isn't just a budget call. It means giving up the infrastructure that makes American military power work everywhere else on the planet. If you want to know whether we're watching the start of World War III,
is this the start of World War III and is America against Iran? My friend, should I watch this one? Eh? You know what? I really like this type of topics. Look, at the end of the day, I know people don't like, videos that have some politics, but look, I guess we are all adults here, right? So we can talk about this type of stuff and learn. And I would love to watch this one. So leave me a like, my friends. It's the only thing I ask. And if this video does well, I go direct into that one. So yeah, thank you so much, my friends. See you guys in the next one. Bye. Actually, not bye. War always bad. I have to say this because some people don't realize that. So, my friends, bye.